G'day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tommy Kendi. I'm your host at Tommy Kendi Unfiltered podcast, and it's an absolute pleasure. And I feel incredible on this episode because I've got one of my soul sisters that's coming on the podcast. Me and her name's Emma Strembickyj, and she is one of the most finest fucking humans that lives in Melbourne. And I've known Emma for a long, long time. We're both yoga teachers. We both, I don't know, we've done like retreats together. We've done workshops together. We've done all sorts of stuff. And she's just one of those people that she just gets me. She literally is my soul sister. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Emma Strembickyj.
Wow, what an introduction. And the love is definitely mutual, that is for sure.
How are you, Emzy? What are you doing?
You're my brother from another mother, so I definitely resonate with your intro.
Yeah, it's so funny. Me and Emma, it's so like you probably think, I don't know, like people probably think that, I don't know, yoga teachers when they get together, they probably talk about chakras and fucking.
We're after chakras conversations, aren't we?
We are, and it's so cool because I can really speak to Emma about this whole world we live in, like not just yoga, all the stuff around it, mindfulness and just what we go through as yoga teachers. And one of the things that I love about Emma is if you haven't been to one of her classes, it's an absolute crime because when Emma teaches whatever she's teaching, man, she literally, her heart is open and you feel like you're being taken on a ride through her yoga classes. And if you've been to one of her classes, I'm sure you'll agree. But I wanted to get Emma on and just pick her brain a bit because she's got such a cool story and she's been through to the depths of fucking, what's the word? Depths of, give me the word, Em.
I want to say hell or darkness. They're the two words that pop up with what the experience was like. It really was.
Yeah. And so she's been, and I wanted to get Em on and get her story and really dive in. And I know that just by even chatting to Emma, there'll be, even if there's one person out there that gets a little kick in the butt or feel like they're not alone, I know this woman will do it. So, Emzy, let's get straight into it. So, I mean, tell us what you do. I mean, what's your gig, man? What do you do with your life?
Oh, my gig, I feel so blessed. Like you, I'm a yoga teacher, so it doesn't often feel like we're working and we do have a good time together, which is great. But yoga teaching is, what I've been doing for about the last 13 years. It started very slowly and it's evolved into being something I live, breathe, sleep, eat. We get it. What are we doing when we're not practicing yoga? We're going to a yoga class together. So we definitely love what we do from the depth of us. So yeah.
Yep. And what else do you do? I mean, you're not just teaching yoga. I mean,
I teach yoga at studios. I've been very fortunate to teach at drug and alcohol rehabs. I've worked with a lot of girls at around the 15 when my real discomfort and disconnect sort of happened. I work with girls like that. I have lots of one-on-one privates where we're delving into, and I'm a bit cautious about this word trauma yoga because I feel like if we're teaching yoga correctly, we are teaching a form of trauma-informed yoga. But I'm able to assist people that are going through anxiety and I guess the lived path that I once went through to show that there is light and comfort on the other side. I mean, there is hope and there is help. We're not going to be happy all the time. And I think that was one of the things that I had to really understand. You can't be happy all the time. So trying to obtain that is untrue. But at least you don't have to have the high highs and the low lows. So, yeah. But really, if I'm not doing yoga, I'm yogaing because I really, really love it. I just think we've just scratched off the edges and there's always something incredible to learn and know and understand about the practice itself, but ultimately about yourself. So,
and with yoga, do you remember the first time the actual practice of yoga brought you some form of aha moment?
Yeah, I do. I had had both of my girls. So we're talking, probably about 24 years ago. I went to it was actually a Bikram class, but I went to a Bikram class and it was really hard. And I'd come from a ballet background, but I was already in the throes of disconnect. And I went to this one particular class, and because it was so hot and we had to move in these particular ways, I had no time to think. And it wasn't till I got into the Shavasana that I laid down, and the lady did kind of like a yoga nidra, which I understand what that is now, talked us through our body. And I just started to cry because it was the first time in a really long time that I had been in my body without noise and felt comfortable. And that was the first experience. And after that class, because it was so full on, the next class I did probably about a week and a half later was an Iyengar class, which was very Shiketi based. And similarly, the shapes were created in that 60 minutes. I was not worried. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't thinking. And again, when the lady got us down into Shavasana and talked us into our body to rest, I wept because I didn't know how long it had been since I'd had deep rest. It didn't last, but I got a feel of what it was. And so I was deeply moved by this practice then, not understanding what it was, obviously, to where I do now, 20 plus years later, but it had a huge impact on me.
My first little aha moment, I think I was probably practicing for maybe, I don't know, 3 or 6 months or something. And I remember I was in a pyramid pose, and I finally got deep enough into pyramid to be able to see my shin.
Oh.
And I was looking at my shin, and it had like all these little hairs on it, and I'm like, oh my God, look at the hair on my shin. And I fucking freaked out and started crying. Because I saw that there was hairs on my shin, which I probably already knew, but just the intricacies of
it.
And I think this whole yoga journey, I think both of us say the same thing to people. It's just lock in for 3 or 6 months. You choose 3 or 6, and go until you have that first little moment of, oh, what the fuck was that?
Because being so noisy in the mind and busy in life, to have like I said, the ballet background was I wanted to move. I just didn't want that strong discipline. But to stop and just be able to feel safe in your paused body, that was that moment of, oh, give me more of that. Whatever that is, I just want more of that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Give it a go. And that's that classic saying, isn't it? If you don't get yoga, it's going to get you. And when it does, what a gift, because you're getting yourself. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's funny? I reckon a lot of people have this idea that yoga teachers become yoga teachers because they're so fucked up. That's basically all that's left to do.
Yeah.
And I sort of agree with that.
I couldn't agree with you more, because it's, it was, look, a lot of teachers that I speak to have come from addiction backgrounds. But I think too, when you look at, like, I did try AA and NA many, many years ago. And I know that when I read into, say, the 12-step program, and then someone gave me a Yoga Sutra book, I was like gobsmacked at the similarities between the spiritual concepts of recovery and yoga. So,
but before you go into that, because a lot of the listeners probably haven't been in your class or that, so don't assume that they know that you come from an addiction background. So can you let us know how dark did you go? I mean, what did you?
I think when I think about it, at the age of 4, I became disconnected. I still remember that day where I looked up at the sky. I spoke to what I believed was up there. I believed in God from a very young age. I don't know what it was, but I had this sense of, this feeling of something around me that felt safe. Very bizarre, but just this feeling state. Don't know what it was. And I remember being 4 years old, looking up at the sky and saying, why did you bring me here? And I know I spent a lot of my childhood feeling really disconnected from people. I had a lot of friends. I, was dearly loved by my parents, and particularly my grandmother, but I just never felt like I belonged in this world. And for me, my addiction primarily started with an eating disorder. There was this huge and I mean, I'm talking as a mid-50s woman talking back to this child, so I have different language to what I had then. But I had this real disconnect where the I am not enough became such a consuming space that I couldn't even breathe. That to me, fixing everything on the exterior would mean that I would feel better on the inside. So the eating disorder started. If I was skinnier, I would feel better about myself. And, you know, my eating disorder then led to this overwhelming feeling that I had inside, and I didn't know how to stop it. And I was someone that self-harmed. And back in the day when I was doing it, you never spoke about it. I mean, even the shame of an eating disorder to then self-harming. And what I understand now, I just wanted relief from the pain of my head. I couldn't shut my head up. And I was probably 2 months before my 16th birthday where I stole alcohol from my parents' dining room. A friend and I had teed it up to do it. We had some school concert and we stole the alcohol. We drank it before this school performance. I hated the taste of the alcohol, but I loved what the alcohol did to me. I loved that feeling. And it was the first time I could say I was drunk or inebriated at some point. We did this school performance and we're kicking off shoes and laughing and giggling, and the teachers didn't know what was up with us. But that was that first little point of I'd put something inside me that alleviated the pain. And, you know, and then my sneakiness started where my parents would work long hours and, you know, I'd do a bit of homework and sip a little bit of this and sip a little bit of that. And, you know, I mean, it doesn't need the whole dots and I's and crosses of the T's. But the thing was, I was already in a relationship at that point. I got married very young and had children.
Young?
When I say young, I was 20 when I got married. I turned 21 a couple of months later. And the following year, my first child was born unexpectedly. Big surprise, best surprise. And ironically enough, when I got married, I was back in an eating disorder. And what it was just a total disconnect. And to be perfectly honest, if I hadn't fallen pregnant of my firstborn, which the doctors were unbelievably surprised I could even fall pregnant at the weight I was, she saved my life. And I don't think she ever even knows that herself, that had I not have fallen pregnant, it was that moment where I had to become selfless and I had to eat because it was one thing to hurt me, but it was another thing to hurt something inside me. And I just couldn't do that. So I had her, but pretty quickly, you know, if you're not getting the right medicine to the mind, you're going to fall back into your old patterns. And my old pattern now was not only was I back in an eating disorder, but I was using substances and alcohol to just fill an emptiness in me. Now, I wasn't chronically drunk all the time, but I just knew that there was enough of a something coming in to alleviate what the mind was doing. And what the mind was doing is it was so unbelievably noisy. It was just obsessed with myself. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I was really self-obsessed. You know, I wasn't enough. It nitpicked about everything I was doing. And I just got no rest from it. So taking something to take the edge off being me was what I sought. And you know, and then you build that up over time. You have another child, you're married, you've got this life, and I just lived like a chameleon and a fraud. I felt like a fraud all the time. And my anxiety would get so bad. I lived through a stage where I wouldn't even leave the house. You know, I had agoraphobia, I couldn't leave.
And what's if you were to be able to like being past that and obviously being the woman you are today, but looking back on that anxiety, do you remember what did it feel like? What was your experience of that anxiety?
The anxiety was like, and of course, language of an older woman that can speak to this young girl. I had a hole inside me and I didn't know how to fill it, but the hole was contracted and tight. It was like I just needed to breathe out, but I was so scared of living. I was also scared of dying. So I didn't know how to breathe out. You know, I wanted to be on to make everybody around me happy, but it became such a mind fuck, if I can say that, a mind fuck within my own being, that I'd lost all connection to all of me. So I didn't even know who I was. I was merely existing to be what you wanted me to be. And it just, I felt Yeah, I really felt like I needed to exhale. And I knew that when I got older and the girls got more language, I would sigh a lot. And the
Mm,
girls would say to me, God, you sigh a lot, Mum. And I'd sigh because it was almost like the sigh out was a relief to the breath I then needed,
yeah.
you
What a
know?
what a turmoil, like to
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to not want to live but also not want to die.
Yeah.
Like that's a sticky little situation.
Yeah. And I had, I had abundance around me. I had a husband who loved me, two incredibly beautiful children, but you just couldn't explain how deep this inner disconnect was. And it's the irony is that I had such a faith in God, but I even lost my way to that belief. And it wasn't that I didn't believe, I just didn't feel even worthy to plug in.
Mm, mm,
So, I stayed in my own hell.
crazy. And
Yeah.
this is what really intrigues me, uh, about you is you have this gift of this knack of seeing other people, like seeing your past pain in other people. Like you know that the things you do, the workshops, the retreats, the yoga classes you teach, as soon as someone walks in with pain, you see straight through them. And uh, I'd be interested to hear what you do in that situation. Do you just let them unfold in their own way, or do you actively step in as a guide, or how do you navigate that situation?
Well, it's, one of the lines that I learned in recovery was that religion's for those that don't want to go to hell, and spirituality's for those that have been to hell. So I think, that spiritual aspect of what happens in yoga and why I understand. Because if you had told me at, 50, nearly 53 years old that I was going to grow up and be a yoga teacher, I never would have believed you, right? But this is so much better than I could have even imagined.
What did you think you were going to be?
I had no idea. No idea, but this wasn't it. This was way better than I would have planned. So when someone comes in like that, what I understand about, and I say it's a gift and a privilege to be a yoga teacher, because what happens to me in a class, I feel like it's not me, but it is me because it's obviously me in the room. So when someone comes in like that, I think in my journey to learn to understand and truly love myself, not the ego self, but that real connection to that love back to the self, that person that comes in with that pain offers me that opportunity. And when I say that, it means that when I see their pain, something happens inside where I meet this love that I craved to have for myself, but I was able to give it outwards. And now it becomes a very, very mutual exchange. I'm also mindful not to push someone. Like someone, the most they can do is sometimes turn up to your class, and that's enough, and be seen and really be seen. And through your eyes, you can meet someone with your eyes and you can feel that love and that exchange. And other times it's a gentle hand. I don't understand what it is that I do in a yoga class. I don't understand what channels through me. I don't ever need to. I think that will probably change who I am, and I don't want it to. I think there could be a little bit more of an ego than sometimes I have to work on. But whatever divinely is being channeled through, I'm just grateful. And whatever is to exchange between that person and I, it happens on levels that I can't explain to you. So I can't say specifically I'm going to prompt that person and crack them open, or you know what I mean? I don't know. I think what happens in that yoga room is, oh, I'm
Yeah.
breaking into tears. But I feel like that day that I was 4 years old and I looked up at the sky and I felt that entity and I said, what am I doing here? Now I feel that entity and I go, I know what I'm doing here.
Mm, mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, because and we talk about this quite often, through our weeks, we're each other's little sounding board.
Yeah.
But we often talk about when we see students, coming in to our classes and we just go, like we play, like first off, we always go into this full judgy fucking thing. We like bag all the shit students, right? But
We do share a lot. It's good that we can be so honest with each other. And is it I don't know that it's really judgment. It's just like sometimes you and I just need to get stuff out that we wouldn't say to anybody else.
Yeah,
Ever.
100%. No, totally. But at the same point, where it's funny because we're judging from like a really compassionate
Yeah.
place because
Yeah.
we're going, how is it that you don't? Why don't you want to just dive in a little bit deeper? And it doesn't
Mhm.
come from a place of like, oh, you're not doing your downward dog ride. It
Yeah.
comes from a place of, well, I think we see, and I'm sure most yoga teachers would, but we see the block. It's right there. And
Mm.
we also know what's on the other side of that
Yeah.
block and what opportunities and potential is there for them on the other side of that, you know?
Mm.
And so it's so interesting to be able to see the pain in other people, but to be able to have a level of compassion for that pain. And part of me, I don't know if you feel this as well, but part of me is almost jealous for people that haven't got that those aha moments yet, because I'm chasing those aha moments all the time. And when you don't
Mm.
get one for a few years, you're like, fuck, am I doing this wrong?
Yeah. 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 I feel you. Look, towards the end of last year, I feel like I turned my practice against me. I was one of the older teachers. I went into this really dark noise. Just, I don't know where it came from, but it came back. And the timing of Tina, Phoebe, and I going away to India was ideal because it reignited that ahas again. Because I think too, like we can't keep seeking. It's a matter of discovering, and it's going to be a constant discovery. So even the language that's changed, and I feel like I'm back to square one with my practice, but with a new set of eyes, a new body, a freer mind. It'll filter in. Of course it will. Part of the journey of being a human is to, keep the practice practicing, because our neuroplasticity does fire back to old patterning. But the aha moments are more subtler, I think, now with our practice. Like they're not those really big moments, like you said, where you notice the hair on your shin, or, even sometimes where you almost feel your skin breathing. It's so much more subtler than that. And I think too, when that's become, or that's what's showing up for me in my teachings, in my practice, the subtlety isn't so subtle anymore. It becomes even more expansive into what we're able to tune into, feel, see in another, connect in. And one person suffers, we all do suffer. Like that understanding of that becomes more prevalent
Mm, mm.
because we're
What?
so connected as one.
Yeah. What's been the biggest lesson that you've learnt in your whole life?
Like, this is massive. But I did think about this because when I got back from one of my trips, someone said, sum it up to me in one word or a sentence, what your biggest lesson is. And it's going to sound ridiculously corny, but I know that this now is my biggest lesson I've learned. It was always in me all along. So, when I look at my life of the books that I used to read, and the next self-help book, and, all this exterior stuff, I did everything outward and I never went inwards. And really, when the journey inward began was when the real work began, because you can only keep running and doing geographicals. And trust me, I would move the family, we'd move houses, I'd set up house, and I'd go, right, this is the new location. This is never going to happen again. And sure enough, it did. And just to get perspective on the addiction, I had addiction issues on and off for 22 years. So I've been sober now nearly a decade. But I call my addiction starting when I had my eating disorder. But yes, I was drinking alcohol, taking substances, managing one with the other. I'd have long periods of sobriety, a year, 2 year, 3 years, but I'd inevitably fall back into a cycle. And so to me, I was managing something and not healing from it. So yeah, when the deep work inside happened, that's when the real healing sort of came. That's my biggest lesson, I think.
Mm. So for people that are in that pattern of searching for the next self-help book, the self-help course, the next coach, the next whatever,
Mm.
what would be your, I mean, it's not even advice, but what would be your reflection for people like that?
So if I could talk to me back then, I would say reach out, talk to someone, because it became our dirty little secret in our home. And I didn't want the girls to talk about it, and I wouldn't let my girls talk about it. I've been very, very lucky in recovery that I've been able to do a lot of deep healing with my girls, and even ancestral work. My father was an alcoholic, my grandfather was an alcoholic, and I've kind of broken ancestral lineages. So I was taken in the right direction with people that supported that. And there is so much shame to addiction, like so much shame. I lived in the house, I drove the fancy car, wore the nice clothes, all of that, but behind closed doors, there was a massive addiction going on. And so I would say to someone, despite the shame, have the courage to step up, because, you know, I mean, you and I just said this to you the other day, if I had have looked back at that Emma that I saw in active addiction and saw her today, I can't believe that's me. I can't believe the choices I made. And yet look on the other side where and what has happened. And it is only a day at a time, but ask for help. You never know. I mean, I only started talking really about my real addiction about five years ago. It was the first time I sort of really said it in a class and spoke about it. And I probably had 3 women that privately came up to me to talk to me about. They questioned, you know, this is how much I'm drinking of a night. Do you think that's normal? People who don't have drinking problems don't usually ask people if they think their drinking's normal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think if the stigma and the shame can be taken away, and we're able to talk openly with this love of what this practice of living is, to love and respect and be compassionate and kind with each other, we might be able to help each other out of any kind of addiction. It's not just alcohol, it's drugs, it's sex, it's overworking, it's, you know, the use of the mobile phones, whatever it is, any kind of distraction that takes you away from yourself. If you feel like you can't sit comfortably with yourself, reach out. Could just be to sit with someone.
I know in my life, every single time I've asked for a mentor or a guide, and I was like, fuck, I need help. Like, I really, really need help. It's almost immediate when you just give yourself away and you're open for a guide coming in. You take the blinkers off, and they literally just hit you in the face.
And that's the same as what happened to me. You know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I never even knew about ancestral work 9 years ago. And I kept saying, this has got to be deeper. I'm Ukrainian heritage. I'm South American with Native Indian background. And how can this conflict be happening in my world? I was talking. And bingo, someone goes, oh, have you ever heard of ancestral healing? You know what I mean? So I agree with you. And all along, same deal. The teachers that have been put in my path, that have taught me what I know and how I'm able to share in a class, have all helped unravel, undo all of this for me to keep going, because you know.
Is there a person right now that you would look at, or you would see as a, do you have like a consistent mentor in your life?
This is tricky, because I have my girls who are the biggest truth tellers in my world. They never hold back and hold me accountable. So yes, I would say my 2 grown women daughters, who I'm blessed to have as my dearest friends, you come pretty close with holding me accountable, buddy.
Oh, stop it. No, we hold each other accountable. Yeah.
But I'd say, you know, I've got regular teachers that I'm going to. You know, both of us, we have a pretty strict disciplined practice, and I think it's shifted over time. You know, I don't want to say anyone because I don't want to miss out on saying anyone, but I have been really blessed with phenomenal teachers that have come at the right time in my life, that have held me accountable in my physical body, which has then helped me align more on my mat life. So from my mat life to my human life, walking around, because, you know, you're practicing with them regularly. They start to see what your body's doing. They start to get to know you. They start to see where your habits are forming. And when they bring that up to you, it's not just a physical thing that's showing up, it's something more. And so I think, it's kind of changed. At the moment, I've probably got 4 people that I'm attending classes with them regularly. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm aligned with them because I think the language that they're speaking is really relevant to where I am in my life, and I'm learning something from them every time I go.
yeah, yeah. And if someone, let's say someone's listening to this episode, and they're on the journey, they're on the path, whether it's a yogic thing or some other type of work. What would be, but they feel like they haven't found their community yet, or they're sort of on the journey, but they're not. How could they? What's the next step when you've got to take that next leap of faith?
Do it anyway, because it takes like 10 or 17 seconds, whatever it is, that your brain's going to talk you out of what you ultimately need to do. And we are creatures of connection. So even if you don't particularly want to try a class of, it might not be yoga, it might be a running club, it might be something, do something that involves community and try a few things, because the more alone we become, I mean, there's times that you want to be alone. That's very different. I'm talking about isolating and disconnecting from people. That's where we're not made to be disconnected. So keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Do something that feels uncomfortable, because it's in that moment that the growth comes, and it's in that moment that you'll connect to another. You'll never leave doing something that makes you feel uncomfortable and gone, gee, I'm bummed I missed that. It's like a yoga class.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk yoga because that's what I usually choose. If I've got spare time, it's never once I've gone to a yoga class and go, gosh, I'm bummed I did this class. I always
Yeah, of
go,
course.
wow, I'm so glad I did this class,
Yeah. Can you imagine the amount of people that are out there right now, and maybe even listening to this episode, who are like, fuck, I probably should start doing yoga, or I used to do yoga, I really need to get back into it. What how do
Please
we
stop making excuses and just do it. We're so worth it. Someone once said to me, I just don't have time. And if you calculated how much time you spent on the television when you get home, and I know people want to wind down. I'm just using this as a broad little scenario that people want to wind down and watch TV. If you just took that one show 6 till 7 when you're watching the news and you turned up to a yoga studio, that will be much more beneficial to your mind, body, and your health. So there is time. We've just got to prioritize ourselves, and that we're worth it. We are worth it. Like, we build these beautiful lives. We work really hard to have these great lives that we have no time to enjoy. How does that make sense? How does that make sense? Like, even if it's a brisk walk, like go and do things and, grab a friend, go for a walk, maybe try a yoga class.
All right, well, Em, just to because I know you have to go, I've only got you for a limited time, but give us three three main reminders that we should practice every day.
Okay. This is something I've been doing for 10 years now, and I think this is what's helped. As soon as you wake in the morning, don't touch your phone. Sit on your bed, sit upright on your bed, and just give gratitude in your heart for the morning you've woken up to. And I do a little prayer, but just saying thank you is enough. Smile at someone. Smile at someone. Maybe say hi to someone when you get out of your house. Make that human contact with another human being. Even though we've got busy days, meet someone, see them, say hi. And then learn something new every day. We're doing our Spanish lessons in the class, in the car, even though I'm South American, where we're learning all these new fancy words, but learn something new, like whatever tiny little something that something might be. Pick up Wikipedia, whatever. Pick up something and learn something new. There's simple things, but I think gratitude is the biggest one. I think I know I underestimated gratitude. And I don't know that they're so deeply profound 3 things to learn, but a 4th one, be kind to yourself. It's so easy to just, get into the head and not be kind and loving to yourself. Maybe that one first and foremost, be kind to yourself inside, watch your thoughts and just be kind. One of our biggest lies that we can tell ourselves is that we're not enough, and we're so much more than that.
So true, Emzy. So true. All right. I know you have to go, but I'm going to put all Emma's, where you can find Emma, into the podcast notes. And yeah, I mean, if you live in Melbourne, by all means, go to one of Emma's classes if you haven't been to one. I'll put in, yeah, she's got it all on Instagram. I'll put all that stuff into the podcast notes. But other than that, any other?
If anyone wants to reach out, like if you do feel like there's a few women that have reached out, doesn't have to be women, it can be men. If you feel like that there's a bit of discomfort, we don't just teach at yoga studios because you're a number. We teach at yoga studios because we genuinely care. So if you need to reach out, you'll put it on Instagram, please reach out. There is so much light on the other side of any kind of disconnect, and it all comes from within, and it doesn't have to be yoga. It doesn't. But, sometimes talking to someone who may understand where you're coming from or what it feels like to not feel like you belong and remind you that you so do, and that it's going to be okay, because it really is. It really is. I still pinch myself that I'm a testament to living a very sober life and living a life that is far beyond my wildest dreams. It really is.
So good, Em. Such an honour to have you on. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your day. I'll speak to you later. Thanks, Emzy. Love your guts.
Love you too. Woo. Ciao.
Mwah.